Denver area. Dean Phillips of the FBI in Denver says they consider her to be armed and dangerous.
She has made some concerning comments in the past. She has expressed an infatuation with Columbine and the events, the shooting there that happened tragically 20 years ago. And because of that, we were concerned.
Law enforcement searching for the woman last seen in the foothills of the Rockies. They'll make a decision whether to open schools in the area Wednesday, first thing in the morning. The Columbine school shootings, the anniversary of those shootings, is this Saturday. Yuma, Arizona cannot take care of all the immigrants flowing in. Mayor Douglas Nichols declaring a state of emergency, asking for federal help, a FEMA-like response.
Their resources could come in and take care of the situation and would effectively handle that, and that would be a federally occupied, federally funded, federally ran operation, and that would be the best solution.
Yuma just a short distance from the Mexican border. The head of the Justice Department stepping into what the administration has called a crisis at the border.
Attorney General William Barr says judges can't let detained asylum seekers out on bond. They have to remain in detention until their case is heard by a judge, even if they pass the credible fear interview. That interview determines if they're escaping potential violence in their homeland. The Attorney General has the authority to overturn prior rulings made by immigration courts.
Fox's Joel Nadeau reports that order takes effect in 90 days from now. The American Civil Liberties Union says it will challenge the constitutionality of that order in federal courts. This is Fox News.
It's important to have claims process that works for you. At Guahan Insurance Services, we make things simple and convenient. Same door you walk in to purchase your insurance is the same door you open to file your claim. We can't pretend that the car insurance claims process is fun, but we can promise a hassle-free and speedy recovery without any runarounds. For your home, auto, and business insurance, visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center on Marine Corps Drive in Tamuning. Don't forget to like us on Facebook or give us a call at 475-1162 or text 929-SAVE. That's 929-7283.
The GCC Votech Class of 79 is back. Join them on April 27th at the Onward Beach Hotel for a night of dinner, dancing, skits, and reminiscing. It's been 40 years since graduation, so take advantage of this once-in-a-lifetime chance to relive the memories. There's also a memorial mass on Friday, the 26th at the Santa Teresita Church. Be there at 5:30 for candle placement in honor of classmates who've gone before. Tickets for the reunion on the 27th are on sale for $40 a person. For details, find Connie Kittigwa St. Nicholas at 488-6108 or Kathy Diaz, 777-3243. Viva 79ers!
Anticipating the release of the redacted version of the special counsel's report on Russian election meddling, some media reports have suggested administration staffers are worried they'll be outed as sources. But counselor to the president, Kellyanne Conway, tells Fox's The Story with Martha McCallum that's fake news.
They'd rather just try to pit us all against each other and the president against current and former and future staff. I can tell you that we're not looking at it that way at all.
The Justice Department planning to release that report on Thursday morning. The Archdiocese of Los Angeles has agreed to pay $8 million to a teenager who was sexually abused by the athletic director at her Catholic high school, who had continued to work despite prior allegations of misconduct. That settlement reached last week was announced on Tuesday. A teacher in Kentucky has been charged with giving students a lesson on the wrong way to show up for class.
Police in Georgetown, Kentucky say 32-year-old Brooke Ellen West, who's a substitute teacher at Royal Springs Middle School, admitted to instructing students while on the sauce. West allegedly admitted that she did 4 shots of vodka in the classroom. Scott County Sheriff's deputies say students told them that they could smell the alcohol, say that she was swaying on her feet, and even cursed at them. Authorities found she had a blood alcohol content well above 0.3. The school says she was fired, and she's now facing charges of public intoxication and endangering the welfare of a child. Ken Duffy, Fox News.
A bipartisan congressional resolution to withdraw American military assistance from the war in Yemen has been vetoed by President Trump. It's the second veto of his presidency. The president says the resolution would weaken his constitutional authority and put American citizens and military forces in danger. The war in Yemen is being led by Saudi Arabia, and Congress has grown uneasy of the president's relationship with that Mideast ally, especially after the killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Wall Street higher on Tuesday, the Dow up 67, NASDAQ gained 24. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
GRMC's cardiology department treats most complex heart problems. In our catheterization lab, cardiologists use imaging equipment to treat clogged arteries that can cause heart attacks or heart failure. We perform balloon angioplasty, stenting, and other life-saving cardiac procedures. If you suffer from a heart condition, have your provider refer you to GRMC's cardiology clinic at 645-5500. GRMC, where patients are partners.
The stations of Choice Broadcasting are celebrating April 2019 as National Earth Month with the return of our Upcycle Mascot Showdown. Join us on Saturday, April 20 at the Agagna Shopping Center from 3 to 5 p.m. and vote for the best mascot display. Second place wins $250 and first place wins $500. The 2019 Upcycle Mascot Showdown is brought to you by the Agagna Shopping Center, Lolita Kamet from Remax Diamond Realty, Underwater World, Sylvan Learning Center, Family Finance, Buddy's Home Furnishings, Gumamon the Guamster, and Pitbull Empire. Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Free state, that's the key word there. We do live in a free state. So, and when state means country or nation, not one of the 50. We live in a free territory, place governed by the rule of law, subject to the United States Constitution, which can be used to secure and protect the rights of individual citizens. One of those rights is the right to keep a firearm in your house for your personal protection. I don't have a tidbit on the Second Amendment today. I will tell you that one thing that's in the news is a case pending in the courts called National Rifle Association versus NRA-TV. It's a little bit complicated, not particularly interested at this point. I'll keep an eye on it, and when it's appropriate, I'll bring it forward to you so that you can get out your law and order notebooks and continue working on your what we would ordinarily call a JD, but which would be Doctor of Jurisprudence, but in this case it would be a TTD. A Doctor of Tall Tales, which probably is far more prestigious than a Doctor of Jurisprudence. Something worth working on, certainly. So we go from here to that portion of the program that causes the real Joe Cruz to be really quick on the trigger. Yeah, there he goes. Playing that theme song. Theme from what, Real Joe Cruz?
Meet the Press.
Meet the Press. And we call it Zemi Ikotny here on Tall Tales. Zemi Ikotny. That's my bilingual backwards play on words. Translated, press the meat. We turn it around, meet the press. It's the time of the day when I do a post-mortem or autopsy on the editorials from the two daily newspapers that circulate within our community and try to determine if either of them is topical, punchy, edgy, tells us something we didn't know, tells us something we ought to know, perhaps has a call of action telling us some things that we ought to be doing. And the one that meets that standard to the highest degree will be given a blue star. I've got my blue pen right here. Now, the fact that I use this blue star, this blue pen to give blue stars doesn't mean that I don't use it in the usual sense that an editor uses a blue star. A blue pen. A little bit tongue-tied today, Real Joe Cruz. Yeah. So I'm going to start out and tell you about the Daily News today, which occasionally runs an editorial. A couple of times a week, the Daily News will actually break down and run an editorial. Other than that, they persist in running copy from somewhere else. Quite often it's USA Today, USA Today, of course, is Gannett. The Daily News is a Gannett paper, so I suppose they have easy access to the Gannett stuff, and it's probably easier to get somebody to copy and paste something out of the Gannett material than to sit down and compose your own editorial. Well, yesterday, the Daily News had an editorial, so to speak, from USA Today, and I gave them a 0. It's even worse today because it's titled Your Turn, which means somebody else gets to speak up, and that's how they label their usual letters to the editor from local folks, or op-ed pieces from local folks. But this time, they have a guest columnist named Jennifer Palka, P-A-H-L-K-A, Jennifer Palka, a guest columnist. The editorial is hardly worth reading. What it amounts to is several paragraphs to camouflage a nice plug for Kamala Harris, who, in case you didn't know it, is a U.S. Senator from California and a candidate for the Democrat nomination for President of the United States. So that's basically what Jennifer does here. She has this kind of straw man that she uses to heap a little praise on Kamala. Other than that, the editorial really doesn't say much of anything. So I'm not going to give this editorial, I'm going to grade this editorial right now. I'm not going to give it a 0, which, that might be too praiseworthy. This is what I'm going to do. I'm just crossing this one out as though it doesn't even exist. Because if you can't write editorials that have some pertinence to your readership, Daily News, why even bother? Why even have a page that's called editorial page if you're not going to be writing editorials? Call it the Gannett Blackboard or something like that. Be honest about it. Okay, and then we have the Post. Once in a while, the Post seems to come down with PDN syndrome, but very, very seldom. The Post is affiliated with WAPO, and sometimes they run stuff from WAPO, but not very often. And usually the Post is right in there on the issue of the day and having something to say. Here's what the Post is saying today. Promise to sufficiently fund public education must be kept. And by way of preface, if you ask anybody who has ever run for any office, from governor all the way down to assistant dog catcher for Malolo, every one of them will tell you, oh yeah, education is my top priority. And this holds true right up until the time it's time to spend some money on education. And then, well, we have other things in the budget and other matters to fund, and so we're doing the best we can with education. I hope you understand that, because education really is my top priority. And then you look over that person's shoulder and you see his fingers behind his back like this. He's standing there telling you that his education is his top priority, but he's got his fingers crossed. I slipped up, didn't I? I said he. Okay, let me try it again. So you're talking to this person, and the person tells you that education is their top priority. And you gaze over their shoulder and you see that they have their fingers crossed. Now, this is only one person, but it is two fingers. So here's how the editorial goes. If elected officials promise that education is a key priority, and rightly so, because it will help provide our youth with what they need as they aim for success, that promise must be kept. This administration's promise to prioritize funding for public education hasn't been matched by its proposed spending for the 2020 budget. In its submission to the legislature, the proposed funding for public education falls short by more than $100 million. Just a little bit, just only $100 million short. Amid all the mandates that lawmakers over the last few decades have imposed on educational institutions, our educational officials have had many challenges keeping up to meet a very basic goal: providing an adequate education for our children. And whether it's Astumbo Elementary, John F. Kennedy, Guam Community College, or the University of Guam, what's necessary is adequate funding, unless our island lawmakers want to do away with some of the legislative mandates. And don't even think about going there, because a couple of years ago, we had a director, as he were superintendent of education, John Fernandez, who was saying, well, maybe we ought to ask the legislature to excuse us from the 14 points in the Every Child Act. Bad idea. You know, it's the old, if we can't fix it, it ain't broke idea. The Guam Department of Education bases its budgets on those mandates. For example, the Every Child is Entitled to an Adequate Public Education Act requires the DOE to, among other things, have certified teachers and administrators and provide properly cooled classrooms and textbooks for every student. Anyone living on Guam would know that none of these goals have been consistently met at all the schools. But it's not for GDOE's lack of trying. It has not been given sufficient funding to meet those requirements. Meanwhile, DOE is trying to address $90 million in deferred maintenance. The cost is based on a report from the Army Corps of Engineers that is more than a decade old. It's pretty certain that since the report was released, there are more maintenance issues at the more than 40 public schools on island. And we haven't even started discussing the charter schools, which are also publicly funded. Guam Community College is launching another new program to help our public school children as it implements the, quote, middle college program in schools. GCC has a good record of stretching its public dollars, even in the midst of budget cuts, and has managed to maintain programs that address the community's needs. However, GCC also constantly struggles to keep things running smoothly because it has had to juggle funds when the funding stream slows. Now, that's our friends over there at the Bureau of Budget and Management Research, who recently found a way to give themselves retroactive salary increases back to 2014. I think I covered that yesterday. We can talk about reducing costs and improving efficiencies, and we should do so as a community. However, if elected officials promise that education is a key priority, and rightly so, because it will help provide our youth with what they need as aim for success, that promise must be kept. Education helped this administration to pave its way to ADLOOP. It's the reason thousands of Guamanians filled the ovals on the ballot for Governor Lou Leon Guerrero, who, by the way, was our first
female governor. Sir.
Yeah, and Lieutenant Governor Joshua Tenorio, who, by the way, was our first
openly gay governor, sir.
Openly homosexual governor, yeah. So we have to keep remembering these things, as well as some of the senators. And of those senators, how many of them are females, real Joe Cruz?
10, sir.
Yeah. We now wait on our elected leaders to fulfill their promise and ensure the path to our children's successful future is sufficiently funded. Right on, Guam Post. Yeah, even, of course, it's pretty easy to win when the other side forfeits the game. You know, when the other side doesn't even take the field, it's pretty easy to at least kick a field goal, right? Well, here's the Post. A big blue star today for the Guam Post. Good job, Post. Okay, from there, we go next to the card. And I've got some interesting things on the card. I have taxpayers versus John Beneventi. Maybe taxpayers versus CCU. It depends on how you want to pursue it. And I also have the next episode of 666 Gate. This is the one that deals with the slush fund available to Lou Leon Guerrero, known as the transition money. There was a $666,000 slush fund at one time, and I educated the real Joe Cruz on that, sent him home to read the book of Revelations, which he no doubt did immediately upon arriving at his domicile. Correct, real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So now he understands the importance of the numbers 666. So I've got 666 Gate. I've got Tlaib versus Pelosi, which I didn't get to finish last time. I've got Rivera versus Babauta. This goes to the Guam Mass Transit, which has been on the card for a while because I haven't been able to get to it. Lou versus the legislature. This is, again, my take on Lou's State of the Union and her rather artful ability to corner the legislature in a very untenable position. And then I've got one called Turley versus Clinton that kind of goes roughly to our new adjutant general, if I can get that far. So let's start out with taxpayers versus John Beneventi. For you readers of the Post, this was the lead story on the Post this morning, and it's titled, GPA Managers Get Bonus Raises. The Consolidated Commission on Utilities approved a $25,000 bonus for Guam Power Authority General Manager John Beneventi late last year. Did you know that, real Joe Cruz?
I know it now, sir.
Yeah, but you didn't know it late last year.
No, I didn't.
You didn't know about it when it happened, did you?
I did not know when it happened.
Yeah. Would it be fair to say that it slipped under your radar?
Probably.
Yeah, and probably if it slipped under the radar of the real Joe Cruz, the same thing happened to just about everybody else, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to. You got to get up pretty early in the morning to fool the real Joe Cruz.
This is true, sir.
What time does your program start on the other radio station?
10 in the morning, sir.
What's the name of that station?
The Massive Music Midday Show.
And what is the name of your station?
Star 101.
Star 101.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. A companion station.
Yeah.
To Tall Tales. The point.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So anyhow, John Beneventi got a raise of $25,000 late last year, and now we're just finding out about it. Thanks to John O'Connor, one of those eagle-eyed reporters over there at the Post. Not only that, but Beneventi signed off on pay raises for senior officials, amounting to close to $70,000, excluding benefits. Now, I read this and I said, who do these guys think they are, the mayor's council? You know, and I kept looking for Angel Sablon's name in there, but even Angel Sablon didn't meet these thresholds. The following payroll changes were approved by the CCU during a closed-door meeting. Yeah, a closed-door meeting. You can pretty well see what's coming here, can't you, real Joe Cruz? Pay raises approved. No wonder you didn't know about it.
The door was closed.
The door was closed.
Man, I hate it when that happens.
The door was closed. The Fourth Estate was kept out of that meeting. And had it not been for the Post, we might never have found this out. A closed-door meeting, and the pay raises went into effect on January 1, 2019. Happy New Year, John Benevente. Benevente received a bonus of $25,000 on top of his $225,000 annual pay. Assistant General Manager of Administration Beatrice Lemtiako's annual pay went from $128,282 to $144,772. Assistant General Manager Melinda Mofness received a pay bump from in March of 2017, so she got a raise in 2017 from $138,870 to $145,000, and another raise from $145,000 to $155,215 on January 1, 2019. You know, they must have a really hard time hiring people out there at the waterworks to have to come up with salaries like this to meet the competition. I bet you a lot of businesses in town are paying these same kinds of salaries. You know, GTA, I'll bet, has, which is another utility in town, probably pays these kinds of salaries. Assistant General Manager of Engineering and Technical Services, John Cruz Jr.'s pay increased from $145,000 to $155,215. Chief Financial Officer John Kim's annual pay went from $135,000 to $152,157. So he got a $17,000 raise. Legal counsel D. Graham Botha Jr.'s pay went from $135,000 to $144,772. And CCU Chairman Joey Duenas said, quote, "We pay our people what they're worth, and the proof is in their performance and delivery of service." I'm going to repeat that. We pay our people what they're worth, and the proof is in their performance and delivery of service. Okay? We don't want to go back to a time when you get 6-hour load shedding, he added, referring to GPA's decades-old past of lengthy power outages. So the way, you know, if we only understood back in the time when we were having all the load shedding, you remember that, real Joe Cruz. Remember what the most popular song on the radio was at that time? The Load Shedding Blues. Remember that? You know, you couldn't turn your radio on any time of the day or night without hearing the Load Shedding Blues. It was tough. I just hated it, and I said more than once, I don't care how much I got to pay for it, just give me enough. But we kept on with it, but we just didn't understand. Now, according to Joey, we don't want to go back to a time when you had 6-hour load shedding. So taking that and putting it together with the rest of the story, we could have ended that immediately just by paying the general manager and other employees a lot more money. You raise their pay, and all of a sudden the load shedding just stops. Now, these things like generation, transmission, not anywhere near as critical as executive salaries. If we had only known that at the time, darn. Hindsight is 20/20. Increments, merit bonuses, and other upward pay adjustments for government employees were prohibited by the fiscal 2019 budget law. But the CCU took a stance that the law doesn't apply to GPA and the Guam Waterworks Authority. Several legal opinions have since been released regarding those personnel restrictions. Okay, so I got Take 5 coming up, theme song coming up, and I have A. Ray on the line. It's not our Ray, it's A. Ray. Okay, so Ray, hang on till after this break, and I'm gonna pick you up in just a second, okay?
This is Ronnie. Ronnie is about to break his piggy bank.
Come on, piggy bank.
Ronnie wants to upgrade his smartphone.
And this piggy's gonna help me.
If Ronnie had signed up for GTA's handset payment option, he could have selected a new smartphone with an affordable monthly plan.
I could have what?
Exactly. Sign up for HBO at GTA and don't break the bank.
I'm sorry, Piggy Bank.
Terms and conditions apply. Visit gta.net for more information. GTA.
In illness and in wellness, Calvo's Select Care is health care that is there for you. That's why over 80% of the Guam medical community places their trust and insures with us. We offer our members wellness and fitness programs for a healthier lifestyle and provide a comprehensive medical network on and off island to help members from unexpected illnesses. Contact Calvo's Select Care today for more information.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
So there's a lot more. I've got a lot more to say about this, but I want to find out what Ray has to say. Good afternoon, Ray.
Hi, good afternoon. I just want to make a comment with some of the things you were discussing with CCU.
Go ahead.
So first thing is, I think there's an open government law in which when there are government meetings, such as board meetings, there's supposed to be minutes taken. And now also there's a requirement for it to be recorded. So I don't think they can just close the door and say, hey, the public is not invited, because there's a law that requires for government meetings like that, when it's held, it has to be public.
Well, Ray, that's why the title of this piece is this item on the card is Taxpayer versus John Beneventi. You're exactly right, and I will be getting into that. But you're exactly right.
Yeah, and as a taxpayer and as a customer, I would have wanted to be able to attend such a meeting to complain that I don't believe GPA is operating at 100%. Why? Because I experience 5 to 10 minute brownouts on a regular basis in Tamuning, maybe once a month. And it's an irritation because I have to reset everything because of that. And it's only 5 minutes a month, right? It comes on, it comes off, and then it comes on like 5 to 10 minutes later. So I don't think the level of service is there if that's happening.
I think what you're saying is a ray of sunshine here in some rather dark, cloudy sky, Ray.
Yeah, so there's some things there that I'm shaking my head. I go, it doesn't sound right to me, right? And why is this happening? I don't know. And why are we just learning about it? You know, there should be an announcement that this is going to happen so that there could be public feedback, right?
Exactly.
We are the customers. It's not the people that are working in the government that makes the decision to increase the rates, especially if us as customers are not happy with the level of service that is supposed to be provided.
I agree 100%, Ray. And that's exactly the reason that we have that open government law.
Yeah. So if that didn't occur, then I would ask why. And we can get minutes of the meeting because it's supposed to be recorded and by hand and by recording instrument.
I hear you, Ray.
Yeah, so I don't think this is going to be over. I don't think it's a done deal. You know, they got to answer some of the public's concerns about the power. Why is it going off every, so many times a month? That really irritates the heck out of me because I come home and my equipment shows power failure. And it's blinking, and it's like, oh my, another one.
Sure.
And it's such an irritation.
I hear you, Ray.
So okay, that's all I wanted to say.
Well, thanks a lot for calling and sharing. And you and I are on the same wavelength, or on the same circuit on this one, Ray.
Terrific. Thank you.
Bye. Okay, so Joey Duenas, we pay our people what they're worth, and the proof is in their performance and delivery of service, except down at Razov's. We don't want to go back to the time when you get a 6-hour load shedding. Increments, merit bonuses, and other upward pay adjustments for government employees were prohibited by fiscal year 2019 budget law, but the CCU took a stance that the law doesn't apply to GPA and the Guam Water Works Authority. Several legal opinions have since been released regarding those personnel restrictions, which were wide-reaching, encapsulating all government branches, agencies, and public corporations such as GPA. It also included a short-term hiring freeze and restrictions on travel. Going on to the next part of the story, the heading is CCU Law Encroaches on Authority. The CCU had cited a 2012 Attorney General's opinion voiding at that time a hiring freeze as it encroached upon the authority of the executive branch. CCU stated in its October 2018 letter to the legislature that staffing functions are at the very core of the day-to-day operations of the utilities. The personnel restrictions in the fiscal 2019 budget law therefore serve as an impermissible encroachment on the plenary powers of CCU, it added. The Guam Daily Post sought pay information on GPA assistant managers, lawyers, and the chief financial officer through a Freedom of Information Act request for fiscal 2017 and 2018 in the first 2 quarters of 2019. So there's an interesting question as to whether that legislation did or did not apply to the CCU. But there's a much easier question to deal with, or a much easier way to get to the answer, and that's this. The last sentence of the article said, the notifications state, notifications, now that would be the notification that each one of these people who got a raise, including John Beneventi, the notifications state that bonus and pay adjustments were discussed during a CCU executive session on November 27, 2018. And you'll recall at the beginning of the article, with this sentence appears, the following payroll changes were approved by the CCU during a closed-door meeting. So when is it okay to have a closed-door meeting and approve salary increases, Real Joe Cruz? I'll give you a hint. The answer starts with the letter N.
Never?
You got it.
Wow.
Yeah. Give yourself a Law and Order medal there, Real Joe Cruz. Okay, so let's get out our Law and Order notebooks and let's see what the law says about salary increases and executive sessions. If you were to turn to 5 GCA section 8111, 8111, the subtitle of that, or the title of that section is Executive Sessions. And in the middle of that section, you find this language. Under no circumstances, however, shall a public agency hold an executive or closed meeting to discuss salaries, salary levels, or salary adjustments of any employee or officer. Would that apply to the general manager too? Well, it says any employee or officer, right? All such discussions or decisions must be held in a public meeting, and minutes shall be kept and open to the public. Okay, so that's where we start with this. So what happens if the CCU has a meeting in executive session, and you notice it says you can't even discuss these things in an executive session. You can't, the way I read it, if the CCU were in executive session for a legitimate reason, such as pending litigation, and one member says to the other, don't you think we ought to give John Beneventi a raise? Violates the open government law. You can't discuss salary increases, et cetera, in executive session. It has to be an open session, and there have to be minutes recorded of what was discussed in open session. Okay, well, then the next question is, well, if the CCU didn't comply with that law, so what? For that, we go to 5 GCA section 8114. Action voided. Any action taken at a meeting in violation of any section of this chapter, that's the open government law, shall be void and of no effect. Shall be void and of no, it didn't say voidable, it says void. So, in the beginning of the article here, Beneventi signed off on pay raises for senior officials. Well, those papers that Beneventi signed off on, although they have the language that appear to provide raises, are void. So what happens? It's kind of like you come to a bank. You come to a bank with a check, and you sign the check, but there's no money in the account. If the bank mistakenly paid that money out, wouldn't you have to pay it back? Yeah. So that's where we are. There was no authority to give anybody a salary increase. There was no authority to give John Beneventi a bonus of $25,000. And by the way, do the math. $25,000 a year works out to $12.01 per hour for somebody who works a 40-hour week. And we're talking about raising the minimum wage to $9.25 an hour. And John Beneventi gets a raise that's far larger than that, and an illegal raise that's far larger than that. Okay, so we know that those raises are void, not voidable, but void. Now, I suppose we could get Pika Feharan to write a letter to the legislature asking the legislature to take that which is void and make it legal, kind of like she did with the 103 void leases at the land trust, right? But or maybe we could get Rory Respicio to get involved here. Rory seems to have a knack for coming up with the solutions to these things, but that isn't going to work. Here's the next important provision. We have a statute called Proper Enforcement of Government Spending. And if you were to look at 5 GCA 7103, it says taxpayer standing to sue. Any taxpayer who is a resident of Guam shall have standing to sue the government of Guam and any officer, it's agent, contractor, employee of the government of Guam for the purpose of enjoining any officer, etc., from expending money without proper appropriation, without proper authority, illegally or contrary to law. Illegally or contrary to law. Okay, so since those meetings, so that executive session providing for those salary increases meant that that action was void, then paying money out on a void authority is illegal. So if you look at the statute a little further, the ability to recover the illegal payments is also set forth. So this could be a big time problem for John Beneventi, who signed off on the pay raises. And since the statute talks in terms of any public officer or any officer, arguably the CCU. So I'd really be interested in seeing a public-spirited citizen come forward and at least write a letter to the CCU and to John Benavente and the public auditor and the attorney general and the commission, the mayor's council, of course, right? You have to write to the mayor's council and the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, asking them to stop making those payments and to recover the illegal payments, put them back in the treasury. I wonder if our public auditor would be interested in such a thing. So, Real Joe Cruz, you know, we have a constitution, and it may set forth rights and liberties, right? But in order to maintain and guarantee those freedoms, what do we need?
An active and informed citizenship.
Is that kind of the right of a person?
It's not only a right, it's a duty.
It's a duty. Okay, so let's hope that duty-bound citizen comes forward and takes advantage of the proper enforcement of government spending law to take care of this matter. This is a travesty, because we kind of went through this a little bit with the CCU on the surprise Thanksgiving holiday. Remember when they said, well, we polled the members and they agreed. So, you know, this stuff just can't go on, especially when we're talking the kind of money we're talking about here. Okay, I've got a caller here who wants to make his mark. Good afternoon, Mark.
Hey, afternoon, Senator.
What can you tell me, Mark?
Nothing will happen.
Nothing will happen if nobody does nothing.
Well, ratepayers, we can express outrage all we want, and nothing will happen.
Well,
that's the, I guess, the mode of how the government of Guam works. They do what they want. If it's a violation of the law, no problem. We're doing it anyway. So just sit back, shut up, and be quiet.
Well, remember, Mark, I did read 5 GCA 7103. Any taxpayer who is a resident of Guam shall have standing to sue the government and any officer, etc. So the remedy is there.
Oh, well, okay. Well, then, you know, not to digress too badly, but what about 8 senators that took an oath to say that they would follow federal laws applicable to Guam and the laws of Guam, but yet still voted to have adult use cannabis?
Well, we have a shot at them at the next election. It's pretty hard. I don't know of what kind of claim a person could make against a senator for violating his oath, other than campaigning against him when he runs for when they run for re-election. But this is a little different. This is a statute that clearly gives a taxpayer standing to raise this issue. And I can give you an autobiographical example here. Do you remember the Rodriguez Cruz campaign? Mark?
I guess we lost him, sir.
Did I lose you? Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, Mark, if you're still there, Dennis Rodriguez and what was Cruz's first name?
Was it Frank? No. Hold on.
It's funny, I forgot that name already. Anyhow, there was this rather complicated story about a contract that Cruz had as an ROTC instructor, where he was being paid $140,000 a year as an ROTC instructor, and he was still a candidate for lieutenant governor. And if you looked at our so-called Hatch Act, you can't have a government job and be a candidate. And there was some hokey stuff going on. Well, he's unclassified, and it's a special contract, etc. But I put together what I thought was the applicable law, and cited to the Proper Enforcement of Government Spending Act to send a letter to John Fernandez, and he fired Cruz. Now, there was a lot of discussion about whether there was an ultimatum involved, whether he gave Cruz a choice: if you don't quit your candidacy, I'm going to fire you, etc. But anyhow, it worked that time. So, I go back to the real Joe Cruz's set base here. While a Constitution may set forth rights and liberties, only the citizens can maintain and guarantee those freedoms. Active and informed citizenship is not just a right, it's a duty. So if a half dozen ratepayers got together and raised this issue, maybe something would happen. But if you take the position, oh, well, nothing's ever going to happen, so I'm not going to do anything, you'll always be right. So I got a break coming up here, Real Joe. Short break, and I'll be right back.
Docomo Pacific's all-new business bundles provide tailored solutions to help your business become a better business. Choose from our Business Basic, Essential, or Value bundles and get unlimited talk and text, worry-free data at home and abroad, plus access to the fastest online speeds in the Marianas. Add on mobile or broadband lines and save up to 20% for each line. Email businesssales@docomopacific.com to find out which bundle provides the best solution for your business. Terms and conditions apply.
It's a seafood celebration on the Lent menu, now back at King's Restaurants. Your tasty favorites like salmon curry, orange shrimp, and whole deep-fried parrotfish will have you swimming with flavors from the sea. Our fried rice with salmon or shrimp will make ordering easy and delicious. It's a seafood celebration on the Lent menu. Available all day, every day, just for Lent, and only at King's.
So here we are back again. The name I was stumbling over was David Cruz. Dave Cruz was Dennis Rodriguez's candidate for lieutenant governor. He was also employed in the Department of Education, which, in my estimation or my study, was clearly against the law. You can be a candidate and you can be an employee, but you can't be an employee if you're a candidate. And I wrote a letter to the Director of Education, cited to 5 GCA 7103, and said, you got to stop paying this guy because his employing him is illegal. And the director fired David Cruz. So just a little autobiographical sketch there, Mark. Mark? Are you there, Mark?
Senator.
Yeah.
I'm not saying people shouldn't do anything. In fact, I could almost probably predict how this will go down. There will be, we did it in executive session, our bad. They'll go ahead and turn around and do it legally. If there's anything that he's owed but he shouldn't have paid, they'll somehow make it right that they give him the money that he pays back. So he will have nothing lost out of pocket. I believe that occurred back during the Calvo administration when people were being given those bonuses or whatever, and in order to pay it back, they sat there and gave them a lump sum and said, okay, here's how it's done legally, so here's the money, now you can pay it back. And there was never really anything where people suffered any financial harm.
Not quite, Mark, because that ruse that we'll give you the money to pay us the money you owe us didn't work. And the order was given that people should pay the money back. Now, of course, there was no accounting whether anybody ever did pay the money back, but that was the denouement. Now, we were really hampered there because we had a do-nothing attorney general at the time who came out and said that the payment of those retroactive raises was illegal, and then fumbled so badly that by the time she left office, there hadn't been any legal resolution of the matter. This is a little different because the legal resolution is in the hands of the taxpayer, or actually the ratepayer. So you kind of get it's good to be cynical, but it's self-defeating. Because if you're convinced yourself that nothing will ever be done, and you can convince other people that nothing will ever be done, then you'll always be right. But what is the goodness in that? It's better to take a positive approach and to say we're not going to stand up for this. We're going to do something about it. If you push it hard enough, I think you could have some success on this.
Oh, I don't disagree. I guess you're right. I'm somewhat cynical in the fact that how did it happen in the first place? Ignorance of the law is no excuse. It just seems to be this is just how the government or government agencies work.
Well, that's why it's the citizens' job to hold government officials accountable. And once again, going back to this article here, I'm not going to acquiesce to a plea of ignorance when legal counsel D. Graham Botha's Jr.'s pay went from $135,000 to $144,772. If they've got a lawyer on the payroll at $144,000, he ought to know the open government law as well as I do, or as anybody else could if he would pick up the statute and read it. But, what I'm saying is if we let this go, we'll have lots of opportunities to let it go, Mark.
Oh, I hear you. And hopefully at the next, I'll know about the next CCU meeting, and if it's a time that I can make, I would not be, I would be one to be in the audience bringing up their illegal act.
Well, that would help a lot, Mark. And I think that would be a fine thing for you to do. That would be, that if you do that, I can substitute your silver Tall Tales Posse badge with a gold Tall Tales Posse badge.
Okay. I would be honored.
Okay, Mark. Well, thanks for calling in. Okay, and then is this our Ray, another Ray, or the Ray? The Ray. Hello, Ray.
This is not the Ray, R-A-Y, but this is the Ray's friend, R-E-Y.
Oh, R-E-Y. So
right.
Sort of.
I didn't mean to get back on the air again, Bob, but
you're kind of the king of the Rays, then, right, Ray?
Yeah, yes, that is. I agree with you wholeheartedly that we need to take action. And what I called back to ask is if it's possible. I think there's a lot of citizens out there that share the same feelings that we do about this increase in salary, especially when we're not getting the 100% support that the ratepayers are getting, I don't think. And so I would like to suggest, if possible, can your radio station be the conduit where people can come in and sign a petition? I think that would be the first step. Sign a petition that this salary increase we do not agree to, based on the fact that it was against the law. And that if that doesn't do anything, then the next step would be that we as petitioners will take it to court and sue, like you suggest.
I got a break coming up here, Ray. Let me pick that up right after the break.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Concerns about Columbine canceling classes. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Most of the big school districts in and around Denver, Colorado closing for this morning because of a credible threat of possible violence. The FBI, learning of a woman who traveled from Florida to Denver, bought a shotgun and ammunition. The FBI's Dean Phillips says they consider her dangerous because of her fascination with a tragedy.
She has had an infatuation with Columbine and the perpetrators of Columbine. She's made comments to that effect, but she hasn't identified a specific threat to a specific school.
But administrators choosing to close schools Wednesday out of an abundance of caution. Ironically, 18-year-old Sol Payas hadn't been born yet when the Columbine shootings took place 20 years ago this Saturday, leaving 12 students and one teacher dead. Attorney General William Barr ordering immigration judges to stop the practice of releasing illegal immigrant asylum seekers on bond while they await the outcome of their cases, even if they've passed the credible fear test given to those seeking asylum.
But already the decision is being challenged by groups like the ACLU. They just put out a statement saying, quote, "Our Constitution does not allow the government to lock up asylum seekers without basic due process. We'll see the administration in court."
Fox's Kristen Fisher. The order set to take effect in 90 days. It does not apply to migrants applying for asylum at the normal border crossings. This week, the administration will be in the Ninth Circuit Federal Appeals Court in California, defending its decision to order those asylum seekers held in Mexico until their cases are heard. The administration says the law permitting them to do that has been on the books for 2 decades. Asian stocks closing Wednesday mixed after China reported its economy grew at 6.4% in the first quarter. That's the lowest level in a decade. The Dow, NASDAQ, and the S&P 500 all closed higher on Tuesday. This is Fox News.
Are you waiting too long for a home loan decision? Are you looking for a bank that understands your needs and can close your loan quickly at today's super low rates? Then come no further than Bank Pacific. Our home loan specialists are friends and neighbors from your community, and our decisions are made right here in Hagåtña. Bank Pacific, where we're open to closing your loan in a hurry.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender, credit conditions apply. Viva Bank Pacific.
Okay, I think it's coming up soon.
Yeah, we're on Route 1 and near the airport intersection, right?
There, see it? What's the promo code? Look for the promo code.
Check out the Vantage Digital Billboard and reap the rewards. Catch the promo code on the screen and get $10 off your stroll ride by inputting the promo code on the Stroll Guam app.
Did you see it?
You got it. I got it. You just focus on driving.
Take advantage today and take a look at Vantage Advertising's digital billboard located on Route 1 at the airport intersection.
The French still mourning the damage done to the Notre Dame Cathedral, but marveling at the bravery of those who saved religious and historic artifacts from Monday's fire.
Reports say a chaplain for the Paris Fire Department ran in to save the crown of thorns. The crown is believed to be part of the actual twisted branches that Roman soldiers mockingly placed on Jesus' head after his arrest. Also saved a fragment of wood believed to be from the cross on which Jesus was crucified, and one of the nails believed to have been hammered into his flesh. France's cultural minister grateful for their safety.
We would like to thank the teams as well as the City Hall and teams from the Culture Ministry, the firefighters, the bishopric, who mobilized and made up a remarkable team to secure the most precious items, notably the crown of thorns and the tunic of St. Louis.
In New York, Lauren Green, Fox News.
Police in South Korea say they've arrested a man who set his apartment on fire, then fatally stabbed 5 people trying to escape the flames, including a 12-year-old girl. Police say the man told them he was upset about back pay he says he's owed. The Stars and Stripes will stay on police cars in Laguna Beach, California. City Council there voting last night to keep the flag graphics on their new police cruisers, despite the objections of some residents of Laguna Beach. A challenger to President Trump's bid for the 2020 GOP presidential nomination. Former Massachusetts Governor William Weld explaining to Fox's Neil Cavuto why he's running.
I'm not at one with the president on foreign policy. I think he's insulting our allies and really cozying up to dictators, almost as though he wanted more autocratic facets of the regime to come to the United States, which is the opposite of what I want. So there's a lot to talk about. I think it might even be good for the president to be put through his paces, as it were.
Weld was the Libertarian Party's nominee in the 2016 presidential election. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Ready to buy real estate on Guam? Congratulations! But what now?
There are so many questions, so many things to do. Where do you start? The best place to start is to call Century 21 Commonwealth Realty, Guam's biggest name in real estate. They aren't the best because they're the biggest. They're the biggest because they're the best. Trust the name. Find out why. Call Century 21 Commonwealth Realty today. 888-2121. Trust the best.
Here at APL, our core values give the company its heart and soul. Whether it's connecting your business with our global network through our newly enhanced service or investing our efforts into giving back to the community, APL is committed to serving you. We humbly honor the opportunity to find innovative solutions for you and your business. To learn more about our enhanced service, call 588-4651 or visit www.apl.com/Guam for more details.
So here we are back again. Tall Tales, big halftime show just concluded with that cannon fire. So we're now entering the second half of Tall Tales for today. And during the first half, I spent a lot of time talking about the illegal salary increases that were provided to the general manager of the Power Authority and several key employees. They broke the open government law, and according to the newspaper story that I'm reading here, they broke the open government law. That meant that the raises are void, and that there is a statute on the books called Proper Enforcement of Government Spending, Chapter 7 on 5G, Title 5 of Government Code. And as part of the entry into everybody's Law and Order notebook, anybody who's a taxpayer and a resident of Guam has standing to sue to set aside those raises. And my analysis is that unless people do things like that, you are in effect encouraging the mindset that the CCU engaged in when in November they met in an executive session, gave raises that were effective on the 1st of January that slid under the radar up until an eagle-eyed newspaper reporter picked it up here in the second half of April. So if you are content to say, oh, well, you know, they just do what they want to do and it'll never change and there's nothing I can do, you'll always be right. You'll always be right. You will be as accurate as I am with my crystal ball. And how accurate am I with my crystal ball, Real Joe Cruz?
99.9%, sir.
Yeah, so let's round it off. What would that make it?
100% sure.
Here you go. So you'll always be right if you, oh, well, you know. And there's a concept here that psychologists bat around. It's called learned helplessness. And I'll just spend a little time on it, but they've done experiments, you know, with lab animals where they have trained an animal not to get food even when it's within his easy reach. They've trained him that he couldn't do it. So the animal learned to be helpless. Well, unfortunately, I think we've got a lot of learned helplessness here in our community where people have convinced themselves that when government officials do wrong, there's nothing a citizen can do about it. In fact, and it not only goes to the government, it also goes, as we've seen, to the church. And in fact, until probably relatively recently, not only could you not do anything about it, you probably weren't even supposed to talk about it. Because if you talk about it and you say that someone did something that was wrong, they might give you the Atan Baba. So you'd put up with all kinds of stuff rather than be the victim of the dreaded Atan Baba. Well, if that's what most of the people want, that's probably the way things are going to work out. But if the people say, we're not going to put up with this and take action, and I see my job here as laying out the facts, commenting, educating to some extent what the law would allow for, what the law doesn't allow for, commenting, doing a lot of criticizing of government officials, etc. That's what Tall Tales is all about. Tall Tales is not the place to have people come and sign a petition. That's not our job description here. And it probably isn't necessary because nowadays with the social media, with Facebook and all these other things out there, it would seem that a half dozen interested citizens could put together some kind of a little group to raise the money to take advantage of the proper spending, proper enforcement of proper spending statute. And if anybody did, it would put an end to this kind of stuff for quite a while. But if we just sit back and say, well, you know, there's nothing I can do about it, you'd be absolutely right. Okay, so much for John Beneventi, Taxpayers versus John Beneventi. Next, I go to 666 Gate, which is, you know, it's not the same thing, but I see some similarities here. People in government positions kind of feeling like, kind of taking this attitude like, law? Well, what's that got to do with anything? And the latest chapter in 666 Gate, you'll recall that this started with a KUAM story about the $666,000 in transition inaugural funds that the Leon Guerrero Transition Committee raised, that they raised that much money in accordance with the law. They created a committee that could raise the money, and the money was for a transition between the Leon Guerrero government and the Calvo government. The law said you could spend that money on a swearing-in ceremony and a celebration, etc. That was fine. That whatever money was left over after the transition was to be turned into the Treasury of Guam, and a report was to be made to the legislature within 30 days. Well, the Transition Committee collected $250,000 after Lou was sworn in. And they spent the money on all kinds of things and on all kinds of people that didn't seem to have any connection with the transition from one administration to the other. That first story was Transition Fund Unpoliced. So Chris Barnett did a really nice job of laying out all the facts, a little bit of law, etc. You really got a handle on it really quickly. And Chris Barnett said that when he approached B.J. Cruz, the public auditor, to see if the public auditor was going to do an audit, the public auditor declined an on-camera interview, just suggesting to me that if you live long enough, you're liable to see almost anything. B.J. Cruz turning down an on-camera interview. Never saw that before. But he did tell Chris that, well, no one has complained or no one has requested him to take action. So I don't think I should do it. That was kind of his approach. So I had to go all the way back to Hogan's Heroes to properly describe the public auditor's approach here, and I dubbed him Public Auditor Sergeant Schultz. If you remember Hogan's Heroes and the prison guard named Schultz. Those famous lines were something along the lines of, Colonel Hogan, I hear nothing. Colonel Hogan, I see nothing. Colonel Hogan, I know nothing. So it's kind of like B.J. Cruz was auditioning for the comeback, for the sequel to Hogan's Heroes, and he would play Sergeant Schultz. This stuff is happening all around him. It's in the paper. It's on TV. Well, no one complained about it, so what do you expect me to do? So then another story came out, I think. Yeah, then next we had Crystal Paco, late of KUAM, who is now the spokesman for the governor of Guam. And Crystal Paco said, I'm going to read a little bit of this story. Senators on the lookout for the Lou and Josh Transition Fund report, which was not submitted to the legislature. It appears to be a $666,000 glorified slush fund made up of private donations and a possible violation of law committed by the administration. A review of documents we received by the Freedom of Information Act request show payments made to prominent Lou and Josh supporters like Johnny Cool, Autospot, and even Lou herself getting a check for $4,000. So Crystal Paco, the governor's spokesman, added to the story by telling us that there's only $700 left in the fund. Chris also mentioned, there was a report supposed to be sent to the legislature, and one of the keys at the legislature was an interview with Speaker Barnes. And here's what Chris said about that. Speaker Barnes seemed to shrug off the fact that the report was not submitted, basically saying, go ask Guadalupe. So much for separation of powers in 3 independent branches. Well, the latest chapter in 666 Gate, for all of those of you who are familiar with the book of Revelations, this one is Guadalupe Transition Funds not subject to procurement law. $70,000 in carpet and furniture purchases and $35,000 to a contractor for renovations to Guadalupe and Government House are not subject to Guam procurement laws since these purchases were made with Lou and Josh transition funds. This according to Governor's Communications Director Janella Carrera, late of K57, or PNC News. In a text message to KUAM News, Carrera said, transition funds are not subject to procurement. As reported in our KUAM News exclusive, the Leon Guerrero Tenorio team raised and spent over $666,000 in transition funds. Guam law says whatever is left of the trans funds after inauguration costs shall be deposited in the general fund 30 days after swearing in. According to documents KUAM received by way of Freedom of Information Act request, there were $96,000 left after inauguration, and the trans fund kept accepting donations. Let me read that again. According to documents KUAM received by way of Freedom of Information, there were $96,000 left after inauguration, and the trans funds kept accepting donations, raising another $153,000. and spending $250,000. Lou and Josh were sworn in and inauguration bills of $17,000 were paid. Carrera says only $700 is left in the fund. No trans-fund report was submitted to the legislature, even though Guam law says one must be turned in 30 days after the new administration is sworn in. Any furniture purchased or renovated, this is again from Carrera, any furniture purchased or renovations made to Adelup and the government house using transition money will remain after our administration leaves office. Well, how nice. And then Trans Fund donor Bank of Guam donated $25,000, but the bank was cut checks for over $20,000. So the bank kicks in $25,000 and then gets a refund back of $20,000. Sanford Technology Group donated $9,000. The company owned by Lou and Josh campaign treasurer Tony Sanford was later cut a check of $8,656 on February 5. Sanford also was the transition committee head of government finance. Adelup legal counsel Sophia Diaz was cut a check for $2,583. Now, why would the transition fund be cutting a check to the governor's legal advisor, Sophia Cruz, or to the company of the campaign treasurer or the Bank of Guam? This whole thing just stinks. So let me give you an example of what these stories say actually happened here. You have a statute that says when a new governor comes along, he can start a transition committee, and that transition committee can solicit donations from the general public, and it can spend those donations on the transition, including an inaugural celebration. So let's just say that when this came along, I found the transition committee and I said, I'd like to donate $1,000 to the transition of Lou and Josh. I know it costs money to put on an inaugural celebration. I'm probably going to be there, and I hope you put my $1,000 to good use. Okay, well, later on, I find out that some of that $1,000 that I kicked in there went to the Bank of Guam and to Johnny Cool and to Sophia Diaz. Is that what I contemplated when I made that donation? No. If you collect money, if I go around and say, I'm selling Girl Scout cookies here, cookies are pretty good, but the nice thing is that all of the money that you give me goes to the Girl Scouts to help them with their projects, and you say, oh, that's great, Bob. I'll take $20 worth of those cookies. And I take $20, and of the 20, I give 18 of it to Real Joe Cruz to mow my lawn. And you find out about it, what are you going to say? You're going to be madder than a hatter. Because I took that money from you on false pretenses. I took it from you with the understanding that I was going to use it for my transition, including my inaugural ball and all the rest of that stuff. You didn't give it to me with the understanding that I'd be giving it to Tony Sanford and Sophia Diaz and Johnny Cool and all these other, or the Bank of Guam, for crying out loud. That's not why you gave it to me. So, public auditor, where are you when all this stuff is going on? This is the kind of thing that when you ran for public auditor, people would figure, well, BJ is going to get involved with this stuff. He's not going to put up with this kind of stuff. Not, well, no one has complained, but I don't want to go on camera and say that. Okay, that's pretty bad. But then it's even worse when after the swearing in, after the ceremonies were over, the transition committee still kept accepting donations. Now, I don't know how this worked. I don't know if it happened or not. But was there any sort of an implied condition that the new administration is taken over in January and you want to be on good terms with the new administration? Oh, by the way, did you want to donate to the transition committee? I would have thought that once the inauguration was over, that would have been the end of accepting donations. If you got enough, you had $96,000 left over on the day of the swearing in, and you still kept taking money. And I'm not persuaded at all, well, we bought furniture for Government House, et cetera, et cetera. Who did you buy it from? We know that the procurement law didn't apply. So, you know, what were the mechanics involved there? The whole thing does not look very good from someone who said, well, you vote for me and I'm going to be transparent. She hasn't even sworn in. Or she hasn't even taken office with this transition committee, and we're already seeing some really nasty stuff. So, public auditor, if you're not listening to Tall Tales, you should be listening to Tall Tales. Citizens, once again, going back to the real Joe's trope, while the Constitution may set forth rights and liberties, only citizens can maintain and guarantee those freedoms. Active and informed citizenship is not just a right, it's a duty. So one of the things you could do would be to write a letter to the public auditor saying, why don't you look into this transition, audit the funds of this transition committee and see what really was going on, Public Auditor B.J. Cruz. Everybody could do that. It wouldn't even cost you, I was going to say it wouldn't even cost you 3 cents, but postage has gone up a lot since then. But nowadays, you know, with a word processor and the internet, and it's not that difficult to get a letter out to a public official. And until that starts to happen, so that public officials know that when they do something, and what was it, Real Joe Cruz? It's not what public officials do. What is it?
It's what they didn't do, sir.
It's what they don't do that sometimes gets under our skin, right? Yeah. Sherlock Holmes was able to solve a murder based on not what the dog did, but
what he didn't do.
What the dog didn't do, yeah. So when the mass, the people, start writing letters to the public auditor about things like this transition fund, about the open government violation at the CCU, until that starts to happen, public officials are emboldened. And they figure, well, yeah, you know, there's a little risk here, but it's really, really small. Because even people who know about what's going on and even people who know ain't going to do nothing about it. So I'm just going to roll the dice. What the hell? Okay, so much for the latest chapter on 666 Gate. And I'm going to go now to something that I started, was it yesterday? I guess, yeah. This is Tlaib versus Pelosi. So we're going to turn to national politics for a moment. One of the things that is always interesting to me is the idiocy of the Democrats in national politics. And yesterday I was talking with our Carl about how the Democrats sometimes seem to be like a snake that's trying to eat its own tail. So this article is called Rashida Tlaib Accuses Democrat Leadership of Racism. She says Pelosi uses minority members as tokens of diversity. Now, Rashida Tlaib is one of the two Muslims who grace the lower house of Congress. Rashida is from Michigan. And then we have Ilhan Omar, who the other day commented that some people did something in September 11, 2001. The other one is Ilhan Omar, who is a Muslim from Minneapolis. So this is how the story goes. Oh, it's time for the Jack Hattick treasure hunt, isn't it?
Get a Coke 12-pack for only $3.49 when you fuel up on $35 or more of premium high-performance fuel. Conditions apply. See stores for details. Circle K. Take it easy. Get a dozen extra-large eggs for only 49 cents when you fuel up on $35 or more of premium high-performance fuel. Conditions apply. See stores for details. Circle K. Take it easy. Get a case of Circle K water for only $2.99 when you fuel up on $35 or more of premium high-performance fuel. Conditions apply. See stores for details. Circle K. Take it easy.
I've been in the training business for almost 25 years. I've personally worked with thousands of people, poured a whole bunch of myself into every session, and I love what I do. I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, I gotta tell you, I am long overdue for a bit of a rant.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Well, there we are, the seventh inning stretch, and we've searched high and wide throughout the grandstand and the bleachers at Wrigley Field, and there have been no Jack Hattick sightings. So perhaps he's outside wandering around in the streets of Chicago. Kind of a dangerous place, Jack. Be careful. Okay, so going back to Rashida Tlaib, and the racist Democrats. Representative Rashida Tlaib lashed out at Democrats, not at Republicans, yesterday in the wake of criticism leveled at Representative Ilhan Omar for minimizing the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks, accusing Democrat leadership, including Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, of racism. How can Nancy Pelosi be guilty of racism? She's a woman. And using congressional colleagues of color as, quote, tokens of diversity. Fox News reports that Tlaib claimed in a Twitter message Saturday that she and other minority members of the party have been used as tokens whenever the party wants to project an image of inclusiveness. She joined a number of Islamic activists on Twitter who were accusing Pelosi, who tweeted that 9/11 was, quote, sacred ground, of not doing enough to defend Omar against what they felt were unfair attacks over comments she made that, quote, some people did something on September 11. So this is what the article is saying, that Omar, the Muslim congressman from Minnesota, was speaking to CARE, a Muslim organization, and she said, on September 11, 2001, some people did something, and since that time, people have been hard on Muslims. Now, if you were around on September 11, 2001, you would never describe what happened that day as some people did something. You'll recall that's the day the two airliners flew in. An airliner flew into each of the Twin Towers in New York. It was a horrible disaster. And it was on TV over and over again, an image that's burned into my mind. And to hear somebody say, well, yeah, on September 11, 2001. Some people did something. It boggles the mind. Omar's comments were, it seems, meant to allege that Muslims across the globe have been discriminated against and mistreated in the wake of September 11 attacks, a point she was trying to use to justify her opposition to what she calls President Donald Trump's, quote, Muslim ban, a travel restriction that prevents travelers from countries that actively sponsor and bankroll terrorist organizations from obtaining even temporary visas to visit the United States. The ban itself has been altered several times. The final version, which bans residents of 9 countries, 7 of which are majority Muslim, has held up under legal scrutiny so far. Tlaib pointed out that several 2020 Democratic presidential candidates have called the comments criticizing Omar, quote, incitement to violence. Now this is the new rules. If someone says something that you disagree with, that is an incitement to violence, especially if, horror of horrors, what that person says hurts your feelings. So we used to think of incitement to violence as what in law are referred to as fighting words. You know, if one person says to another person, "You come outside, I'm going to whip your butt," those are fighting words, and there's a little different First Amendment dimension to those than saying something like "you're a wimp," and I could, if I felt like it, whip you any time of the day or night. Incitement to violence is exactly that. It has to be something that's more than just offensive. Tlaib pointed out that several 2020 Democratic presidential candidates have called comments criticizing Omar, quote, incitement to violence, a legal exception to the First Amendment's right to free speech and a punishable crime, but that Pelosi had chosen instead to ask Trump and others to simply tone down their rhetoric. Wow. That's because, Tlaib says, Pelosi and other Democratic leadership are actively racist. And of course, that is the punchline that wins you every argument. No matter what the other side of the argument is, all you have to do is wait for the opportunity and say, "You're a racist." And then you pick up the chips and go home because you won the argument. They put us in photos when they want to show our party is diverse, Tlaib wrote on social media. However, when we ask to be at the table or speak up about issues that impact who we are, what we fight for, and why we ran in the first place, we are ignored. Yeah, now, as I understand politics, the risk of being ignored is part and parcel of the undertaking. That's why politicians are always struggling for relevance, trying really hard to be relevant and recognized so that they won't be ignored. The worst thing that can happen to a politician is that he's ignored, but it's pretty hard to hang that rap on another politician. You guys aren't fair to me. You're ignoring me. And then she goes on to say, speak up about issues that impact who we are and what we fight for and why we ran in the first place. We are ignored. To truly honor our diversity is to never silence us. Now, I don't know that Nancy Pelosi ever silenced Tlaib or Omar or AOC for that matter. I have a feeling that she was tempted on more than one occasion, especially with AOC. Tlaib also retweeted a post from Omar essentially accusing Pelosi of the same as well as a post from, quote, a, quote, human rights activist who doubled down. Now, anybody who holds himself out as a human rights activist has to be carefully watched. More and more, we're realizing that POC, that's people of color if you didn't know, are used as props by the Democrats. Tlaib's retweeted message read, "When we run, we're told to wait our turn. When we speak about our struggles, we're told we're angry. When we ask them to stand up for us, they say we're being divisive." Pelosi's comments on Saturday did not offend Omar. Instead, she merely asked the president not to use images of 9/11 in political attacks, tweeting, "The memory of 9/11 is sacred ground, and any discussion of it must be done with reverence. The president shouldn't use the painful images of 9/11 for a political attack." You know, if we were watching Law and Order, the judge would say to Omar, "You opened the door, Ms. Omar, when you said some people did something. You're just begging for everybody who is offended by that statement, which is just about everybody who knows what you're talking about, to come forward and correct the record." This isn't the first time Pelosi has failed to rush to the defense of her more vocal progressive colleagues. She has chastised Omar before for using anti-Semitic tropes in speeches and accusing fellow Democrats of having dual loyalty to both Israel and the United States. Tlaib has also unleashed that particular smear on occasion. It's okay, though, because what the heck, they're liberals. Pelosi also spirited an effort to censure Omar, which ultimately turned into a weaselly blanket condemnation of all hate. Last week, Pelosi appeared to take aim at Tlaib's and Omar's sister-in-arms, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, also known as AOC, complaining that real policy cannot be made on Twitter. And the article winds up, "This is a battle Pelosi is likely to lose." You know, because the rules are, when somebody calls you a racist, there's no recovering from that. There's no coming back. It's indefensible. Whether it's completely groundless or not makes no difference. If a public difference of opinion arises and one of the participants in the difference of opinion offends the other one in such a way that the other person can say, "Well, that's racist." You know, nowadays we have to tolerate everything. The only thing that we cannot tolerate is one who comes along and talks about the intolerance of those who expect tolerance from others but don't tolerate themselves. That's the way the game has kind of changed. And once again, I blame it completely on the left, on the neo-Marxist, cultural Marxist identity politics approach that the Democrats have embarked upon, and unfortunately have had enough success with it. They're going to keep doing it until somebody stands up and says, "Enough. I'm not going to buy into that." That's what I do. I'm not buying into this stuff, this Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, who can't resist the opportunity to tell you how much they hate the United States. Okay, so much for Rashida Tlaib. And on the other hand, you know, looking at it from if I were to grab my political prism and look through it. And remember, my political prism filters out every concept of morality, decency, legality, religion, you name it. It filters everything else out, and it leaves only political considerations left. So in that respect, I'm saying go for it, Elon. Go for it, Rashida. You're doing a great job. And the more you call Nancy Pelosi to task, the better. And the farther to the left you get, Ms. Green New Deal, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the better I like it, because the Democrat Party is going to get, it's already there, and it seems like the momentum continues. It's so far to the left that they make George McGovern look like a conservative. So when you go to the polls, all of this self-serving rhetoric probably makes you feel really good. And probably amongst your teeny-weeny base, you're a big hero. Or in the case of Rashida and Elon and Alexandria, a large heroine, female hero. How do I say that without being offensive? I'll just call them they, I guess, yeah. When it comes to the American people, either I'm way out of touch or you guys are way, way out of touch. The country is just not that far to the left. We've abandoned some of our common sense, but not that much of it. Common sense still lives in America now. Of course, the Democrats have schemes to stomp that out wherever they can. They'd like to do away with the Electoral College. There's no sense letting people out there in Iowa and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, no sense letting them really have a role in the election of a president. We should go with a popular vote so the folks on the East Coast, especially New York and California, can elect the president. We don't need those folks in flyover country to get involved. And we ought to, and they also want to reapportion the Senate. There's no sense in California with over 40 million people having the same number of senators as Wyoming with 600,000 people. It's just so unfair. So that has to be fixed. And of course, we need to add 5 more justices to the Supreme Court. We probably wait until we got a Democrat president before we do that. But having conservatives on the Supreme Court is something that just cannot be tolerated. So this is what you got to look forward to with the left. Now, left and Democrat didn't used to be synonymous. There were different kinds of Democrats. A little history lesson here. There were yellow dog Democrats and there were blue dog Democrats. Yellow dog Democrats were from the solid South back in the Jim Crow days. And a yellow dog Democrat would tell you, well, if a yellow dog ran for office and he was a Democrat, I'd vote for him. I'd vote for a yellow dog if he's a Democrat. And then you had the blue dog Democrats, who were the moderate Democrats, more towards the middle of the road, etc. But there are no more blue dog Democrats left. The party has gone so far to the left that, as you can see from this article here about Pelosi and Tlaib, the Democrats, if you displease them, they'll eat their own. So I'm going to take you now to Churchill Downs for the home stretch, and during the home stretch, Triple J, your time has come. During the home stretch, I'm going to chat a little bit with our Tom.
Docomo Pacific's all-new business bundles provide tailored solutions to help your business become a better business. Choose from our Business Basic, Essential, or Value bundles and get unlimited talk and text, worry-free data at home and abroad, plus access to the fastest online speeds in the Marianas. Add on mobile or broadband lines and save up to 20% for each line. Email businesssales@docomopacific.com to find out which bundle provides the best solution for your business. Terms and conditions apply.
Ruby Tuesday's Seafood Sensations menu is back. Choose from your favorite dishes made with succulent lobster tail, shrimp, or our newest sensations with crab legs. Try out appetizers like crab fondue or stuffed shrimp. Pick an entree like the lobster tail or crab leg dinner. Select the lobster carbonara or the deep sea pasta. It's all ready and waiting for you. Get hooked on Seafood Sensations for a limited time only at Ruby Tuesday Guam.
The call to the post right here at Churchill Downs. This is the home stretch of Tall Tales. I've got about 9 minutes here until the plaintive strains of Ravel's Bolero interrupt me, and I'll have to call it another day. During that 9 minutes, I'm going to have a little chat with our Tom. Good afternoon, Tom.
Good afternoon, Bob. You know, just like our old friend said, it is your job to make the phone ring, so that's why I stole that call.
I appreciate it, Tom.
Anyway, about the electoral college, I hope they do not succeed in eliminating the electoral college, because this country needs the electoral college, because look what happened. Hillary Clinton could have won if it weren't for the electoral college. And imagine having a president like Hillary Clinton with all the controversies behind her and everything. And also, why do you think Hitler won the election in Germany? It's because they didn't have an electoral college system.
Well, the electoral college is...
They won because they did not have an electoral college system.
Our electoral college is central to the concept of federalism. That is, as I've explained when I was talking to you about the national versus the federal government, our federal system is getting away from us very quickly, and the Democrats would love to do away with it completely.
Yeah, and also Chavez of Venezuela, he won from the popular vote because they didn't have an electoral college system.
Yeah, well, maybe he won, maybe he didn't. That's kind of an open question right now.
Yeah, that's right. He got the government in a coup, right?
Right.
Okay. Anyway, I'll talk to you tomorrow. I'll keep listening. I love listening to your show. And keep up the good work, my friend.
Always a pleasure talking to you, Tom. Okay, and now I've also here on the phone, I've got Masat Gidun. Good afternoon, Masat Gidun.
How you doing?
Good, yourself?
Bob?
Fine, yourself?
Okay, you got a hot show going today. I got to put my safety belt on just to listen to you.
Whoa.
And you're exposing corruption. I mean, this is serious stuff. One of the things, you did a really good job exposing the land management and their Chamorro Land Trust leases. I don't know if it probably was you and Tall Tales that forced a lot of the changes, I would think. But anyway, I just thought I'd congratulate you for that. I know we're running out of time, but I had another question. I had a question for you.
Go for it.
I lived overseas almost most of my adult life and didn't pay a lot of attention to politics, or I just felt good that I was an American and happy that I was a U.S. citizen. And then I find out from a letter that was an editorial written by Bob Underwood that they're not the same. A U.S. citizen is not necessarily an American. Is that right?
I read Robert's column, and that's on the calendar. I just haven't gotten to it yet, but I will get to it. And Robert said, well, people who live in Guam are not real Americans.
That's exactly what I was leading up to.
Yeah.
Last sentence said, Guamanians are not Americans. I said, what? I've never heard anything like that.
Well, it's...
I got to call tall tales.
Well, good call, Mo. Good call. And it's part of that nationalist rap. It's again, part of the identity politics approach to things, the victims and villains approach. So the idea is to make people feel like they're really getting the fuzzy end of the lollipop, because it makes people are not going to change their government if they think their government's working for it. You got to really build a lot of distrust in the government before people are going to say, yeah, let's get rid of this and let's go independent. So the stuff that Bavacqua writes, and I'm a little surprised at Robert, he kind of went that way also. But that's what you're seeing. You're seeing the cultural Marxist approach to politics, and the idea that it's not decolonization. That's not the object. It's Chamorro independence. Big difference between the two. But you are an American, Mo. I know you are an American.
I try to be.
If for no other reason, because you were an officer in the USMC, so you had to have been an American.
Yeah, I had to be, and I was very proud of that, and I am very proud of that, put it that way. But I just wanted to say, you got one hell of a show this afternoon. Man, I was sitting in my car laughing.
Well, thank you, Mo. That's my job, right?
Okay.
My job is to turn over the rocks and shine light in dark corners.
Here's a question, though. Another thing that popped into my mind. I don't know if we have time, but when someone sues the government, they're doing it as a patriot. They're not going to get anything out of it, and it's going to be a lot of hard work. Is it?
Yeah, well, oftentimes suits that allow for suit against government do allow the plaintiff to recover attorney's fees. I don't know if you remember this, but I had to sue Michael Bora on a Freedom of Information Act suit, and I was able to recover my attorney's fees. It took a long time, and it wasn't easy, but it happened.
But see, that's one of the problems. Why can't we just go to the Attorney General and say, look, this law has been broken? Do something about it.
So much depends on who the Attorney General is, and that certainly wouldn't have worked with Elizabeth Anderson. I'm willing to be a little patient with Levin Camacho, but that's why I encourage people, stuff like this, the CCU raises, write a letter to the Attorney General about the open government law violation.
You even exposed C.J. Cruz. Nobody does that.
Yeah.
Except you, except Tall Tales. So, like I say, I was popping around my car. Almost had to stop because I was laughing so hard.
Well, it's not supposed to be a comedy show, Mo, but I guess it might strike some people that way.
No, because you're beating them up. I love it.
Okay, well, thanks for the kind words, Mo. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
Okay, have a good evening.
Thank you, Mo. Si Mo at gidun. Sanya si Mo iki programan Tall Tales na. All right, so tomorrow I'm going to get to Rivera versus Babauta, and I may get to that column that Robert Underwood wrote about who are real Americans. And as I mentioned to Mo, I see my job is turning over the rocks and seeing what crawls out, shining light in dark corners and seeing what's hiding there. So I'll try to do that tomorrow. Adios.